Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for joining me today. I've got a special situation interview. It's the first time I've had him on this company on the Rocks and Stocks News show. And I've been very impressed with the work that I've done to research the company. And they're a newly listed company. They only have a $12 million valuation. And I think as we speak further, you'll get an understanding of why I like this company. Today on the horn, we've got Kit Mars, Joe Pekenbrook, and Vanessa Bogart, and they're going to give us a great rundown. So thank you very much for joining me today, folks.
Thanks for having us, Alan.
Hey, no problem, Vanessa. Okay, Vanessa, why don't you start up the PowerPoint presentation and we'll work our way through it.
Sounds great. Can you see that?
We can, yep. Looks great.
Okay. Well, thank
you,
nice
Vanessa. Part of the country, I see an airstrip there.
There you go. Hey, Alan, I'll go ahead and start off, introduce myself, and then Joe will come in a few slides. So again, my name is Kit Mars. I'm founder, president, and CEO of Western Alaska Minerals. We incorporated in 2010 as Western Alaska Copper and Gold. My wife, Joan, and I founded the company then after we staked and acquired two of the three properties we'll talk about today. So as Alan pointed out, this is a lot greener maybe than the part of Mexico that he's joining us from. So we're in Western Alaska. This just shows you the rolling terrain, very similar to the Fairbanks district, fairly easy to work and develop in from a road mining standpoint, hard to explore in because there's a lot of green stuff. We purchased the man camp from Nova Gold when Illinois Creek was a producing mine, shown here in the low front center. And we have an excellent 4,500 foot airstrip that I actually helped start building in the early 80s. It's been expanded since then. And when we need to bring in a drill or some heavy equipment, we can bring a DC-6 or last summer C-130 Hercules and brought in several new drills, pickup trucks, etc. So go ahead, Vanessa, and scroll through to past the slide. So Alan will be giving you really three major takeaways here today is that we have a very large land package, an entire district that was originally assembled by Anaconda Minerals Company. Very highly promising mineralization, 5 deposits, 5 different metals, but really relatively underexplored, partly because of its size. Joe and I have quite a track record and experience working in Alaska. I started off in Alaska with Watts Griffith McEwitt, a Canadian consulting company, participated in the discovery of Greens Creek, now operated by Hecla in Southeast, worked in the Brooks Range with Anaconda in the Ambler District. That's now the joint venture between South 32 and Trilogy, and then moved down to Illinois Creek and was the first project geologist to start that project. And we'll be focused today on Water Pump Creek, one of the 5 properties, and you'll see here in a minute why. Just a spectacular drill discovery this year. Next slide, Vanessa. We're located, as the name says, in Western Alaska, about 270 miles due west of Fairbanks. Fairbanks is host to the Fort Knox open pit gold mine, a flagship of Kinross, produces about 350,000 ounces a year from an open pit. And Pogo is just south of Fairbanks. It's a 250,000 ounce a year underground mine now operated by Northern Star Resources out of Perth. And they purchased about 2.5 years ago Pogo from a Teck Sumitomo joint venture. We're about 500 kilometers south of Red Dog. Red Dog is the flagship mine of Teck, and it has been the world's largest zinc producer for a number of years. And about 120 miles south of that is the Donlin gold deposit. And I'll let Joe talk about Donlin and introduce himself.
Sure. Hi, Alan. My name is Joe Pekenbrook. I'm the Chief Exploration Officer, like Kit, long-term Alaska explorer. I've been very blessed with a lot of the projects I've gotten to run over the years. Really started my career in Alaska for Cominco early days, part of the discovery team on Pebble. Left Cominco at a point, joined Placer Dome, and ended up working extensively in South America for a while. Was based in Santiago, part of their acquisitions team, Zaldivar and such. Left Placer and joined the junior space. Really transformative for my career in general. I first started at Brett Resources with Larry Nagy and Ron Nedolitsky. A pretty successful spin-out company, ultimately purchased by a Cisco. Then joined Nova Gold as their chief exploration, or as their VP of exploration. Just after Rick Van Nieuwenhuis had started that, we acquired Donlin, which we'd both worked on in Placer Dome, and really thought the project had a lot of legs. Drove that from 6 million ounces to 38 million ounces in 18 months, $3 billion market cap. Acquired the Arctic prospect, entered Galore Creek, got into the takeover battle with Barrick, ultimately ending up in the Barrick joint venture, the spinoff of Nova Gold. I went along and ran exploration at Bornite, and led in Arctic, led to the discovery of Bornite, the South Deep part of it. Been very lucky, won the Thayer Lindsley Award for the work on Donlin Creek for those years, and then won the Colin Spence Award for the work on Bornite a few years after that. Was involved in the Nova group of companies till 3 or 4 years ago. I left kind of in semi-retirement. I'd always owned the Illinois Creek property myself. I'd recognized its potential coming back from Latin America a long time ago. I'd staked it in 2003-4. Kit and Joan were working on their claims in the district, the Honker and the Round Top, consolidated the district at that time with Kit and Joan. And really, Kit and Joan had very good access to private money, kept the company private, but we're kind of at that point where we needed to transition into a public company. And here we went public here in November 15th of 2021.
Well, from my research into it so far, Joe, it's been, looks like you got a heck of a good project to go public with. Quite a compelling story. So we'll get into that more here, I guess.
Yeah, it's always the playoff of how long you want to keep something private. It's simpler to operate, simpler to put deals together, all of those sorts of things, versus when you really need access to capital. And that's really at the tipping point for this last year, was really recognizing the real upside potential of the asset base now in going to the markets for more money to really perform quicker than we had been. I'll turn this back to Kit. We'll go back and forth here a little bit on the presentation. I'll come in and talk about some of the technical elements, and I'll let Kit talk more about the business infrastructure, relationships with the state, those sorts of things. Okay.
Works for me. Sounds good. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So, Alan, you see here the two main claim groups that we have. Upper right-hand corner is Round Top. It's a classic Laramide age porphyry copper moly silver deposit. Very importantly, though, it's intruded into the same Illinois Creek stratigraphic sequence as hosts the Water Pump Creek deposit. So besides being a very good size porphyry copper, it has excellent CRD potential. Today we'll be focused on Water Pump Creek. It's shown in the gold star. And then just south and below that is a gray oval, and that is the past producing oxide gold deposit at Illinois Creek. And then we'll have one slide of some drill core from Honker, which is a very high grade 1/2 to up 1.5 ounces per ton gold mesothermal deposit.
When I was doing my research on the company, that Water Pump Creek and Illinois Creek area stood out like a sore thumb. So I'll let you guys get into why it looks like a sore thumb to me.
We'll do that. And the only thing I want to point out here, that thin red line is a traditional winter access road that Anaconda pioneered a lot of the mine equipment. When the mine was an open pit, the haul trucks came in and left that way. But more importantly, we just completed our second year of civil engineering full set of LiDAR photography, wetland studies, in order to come up with a PA level cost estimate for an all-weather road, which will be important once Water Pump Creek moves ahead, since it would be a concentrate generator. So next slide, please, Vanessa.
Oh,
I'll let
before we
Joe,
go on to this slide, which has some very sexy looking rock, by the way, that would give you then seawater access, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's correct. The Yukon River at that barge landing site, I forgot to mention, is 2 miles wide, up to 45 feet deep. So ocean going barge from Seattle area can come up the mouth of the Yukon River, would transition to a river tug, but stay on your equipment, stay on the same barge, and can dock there and go in the winter. But the goal would be is to have that as a summer sort of 10-month a year or year-round all-weather access once a mine goes into production, and that's really to bring your operating costs down and your operating supplies in from that route.
Perfect.
Joe?
So I'll start talking a little bit of the technical story now. So this was our first year really to drill at Illinois Creek. You know, we had focused on the existing oxide gold silver resource there, had redone that resource, updated it, published a 43-101 on it, and really looked at expanding that initial, it's a 500,000 ounce resource we'll talk about here shortly. Really looked to start expanding that this year. So first year of drilling, we did a really wide spaced kind of targeting strategy just to see some of the geology and all of these opportunities that existed on the property. It had never really had the exploration it warranted after Anaconda left and after the oxide mine went into production. They really hadn't looked at a bigger scenario.
Well, a couple things,
that.
couple things I wanted to point out to the audience there, besides that sexy looking rock you've got there, is that this is a CRD carbonate replacement deposit. One of the world experts on those kind of deposits is Peter McGaw, and he's an advisor to you guys, and I'm sure this is probably why he's an advisor.
Exactly. And if you look at this picture, that's Peter in the logging shed behind it.
Oh yeah, I didn't notice that.
So he came out to give a short course to my team just as we drilled this hole. So this year, of course, the first focus was Water Pump Creek. We realized it was really significant with some historical outstanding grades. Came in and drilled a few holes in the oxide, and then drilled into the sulfide interval at deeper depth.
Wow,
So what
look
really
at
came out of that was this exceptional drill hole. Truly
yeah, look at it, just riddled with sulfides.
Just totally transformative for the company. You know, basically 9 meters true thickness, a 0.5 kilo of silver, and almost 40% combined lead zinc. You can see it's just massive sphalerite, argentiferous galena, really amenable to processing just everything you'd possibly want.
You got a nice point there on your presentation that this is attractive for major mining companies. That Taylor deposit that South 32 brought, I started following that in my reports at a very early stage, and it ultimately became a $1.8 billion valuation takeout. And the reason for that is these kind of deposits can get very large very quickly.
Yep. And one thing to remember on the Taylor deposit, it's 2 ounces per ton silver, so it's about 60 grams, and it's 4% lead and 4% zinc. Okay, it's quite large. I mean, it's a couple of 100 million tons, but you can just appreciate the leverage of this intercept and what it really means. I have a few slides here that really kind of demonstrate these, you know, just why we're so leveraged to high grade.
Joe, just on the silver alone, that would make a mine.
Yep. Well, you can look at the silver equivalent, which is expressed in terms of silver. The byproduct is also expressed in terms of silver. It'd be 886 grams per ton silver equivalent. So what is that, about 45, 50 ounces per ton, somewhere in that range. So the implications of the grade is really, really profound. If we go to the next slide, I'll just I'll just show this in a couple of the market darlings that are happening right now. So you've undoubtedly heard of Silvercrest and Vizsla, both working in the Mexican CRD silver vein belt, very similar geology and underlying metallogenic controls that we're seeing at Illinois Creek. Silvercrest has a $1.5 billion valuation. This is their best hole from this last year, 7.3 meters true thickness, 3,300 grams per ton. So really exceptional numbers.
But you're in the same ballpark between Vizsla and Silvercrest on grade and thickness.
Yep, you see Vizsla's drill hole intercept there, 11 meters at 1,500 grams, and then our intercept. So you can just see that this was truly one of the better silver intercepts going on in the world this year, or lead zinc silver intercepts. And I have another slide that kind of demonstrates this. Again, if you go to the next one, Vanessa, this shows our drill hole hit on the right. Of course, the silver component is dark. It's a bar graph. The gray is the lead zinc component expressed in terms of silver grade. So that's at 1,800 grams per ton silver equivalent. Now on the left, the first 10 bars there are the 10 largest primary silver producers in the world. Okay.
Wow, and look at some of those names. So a bunch of them are close to where I live. Sauceda, Fresnillo is about 80 miles from where I live. Same with Juanicipio.
Exactly.
You know, these are some of the lowest cost, highest grade silver producers in the world.
And you know, you look at those 10 and they average about 300 grams per ton silver or 500 grams per ton silver equivalent. Now, this isn't apples and oranges. I don't want to confuse you that way. This is one drill hole. Those are reserves. Okay, so that's drilling the thing out and understanding it. But you can see if we can maintain a half or quarter of this grade and build some size to this thing, that we can potentially be a top tier 1 kind of silver producer. So that's the real upside in our story. And that's why we're really focused on driving forward now and starting to build a resource off of what we've found so far at Water Pump Creek. If we go to the next slide, just some photos of the core from our 2109 hit, just to appreciate the true leverage to that upside in gold. And I'll look at just one of those images, the one on the upper left, 400 grams per ton silver, 40% zinc, 15% lead, you know, basically 2.5 kilos silver equivalent. This is incredibly dense, massive sulfide rock, probably 4.5 is an SG or higher. Doesn't take a lot of this material to leapfrog us up to one of those companies or comparable with Silvercrest. So I
Joe,
have something to kind of demonstrate that for you.
When you were describing that, it reminds me of my early days in the 1990s. I worked for a company, and they went over to the Iberian Pyrite Belt, and they had a piece of rock there. And man, that thing was heavy, and it was just riddled with sulfides.
Yep. Well, you know, that's what you're seeing here. You know, the two slides on the left are almost total massive sulfide. The ones on the right have a little bit of dolomite in them, but you can still look at the grade distributions. It's just phenomenal grade. So
And
what I have another slide here, next slide, that really says, what do we have to find to really get to reach this sort of resource potential, just from a footprint standpoint. So the historical drilling in a few of our drill holes this year are all in the oxidized portion of the CRD deposit where it comes to surface. Now at Illinois Creek, there's deep weathering of the sulfides. It's about 100 meters deep. It's all turned to just gossan. Okay, that footprint is about 200 by 400 meters. And of course, the lead and zinc and silver have all been moved around from the leaching process. There's some very good oxide grades that ultimately we could recover from you know, in a vat leach scenario or such. But in addition to that, there had been 4 historical drill holes just reaching into the sulfide at about 100, starting at about 110, 120 meters. So this year we came in, and for that Water Pump Creek 2109, we just drilled directly down dip of where those 4 holes are. they define that area now is roughly 50 by 100 meters where we have 5 of these hits, okay? So the
I'm
average,
gonna interject something there, Joe. I mean, one of the things I'm always going over is predictability. And when you have, done the work you have close to surface, it helps you give a predictability. So, if your model works, you're going to hit, when you drill deeper. So that what you've just described there is that you have a good understanding of the mineralizing system and that you have a good model that's predictable.
that's right. We're seeing continuity at Water Pump Creek here. Okay, so it's open, down dip, and a long strike, but at depth below this oxidized interval above. So those 5 hits are average about 1,400 grams per ton silver equivalent. So it wasn't a one-off drill hole. All 5 drill holes that intersect the manto in the sulfide zone have really, really good grade, really exceptional grade. One of them is indeed better than the Water Pump Creek 2109 hit. So I have that in this image. You can see there's on the left, you can see there's the 400 by 200 that's been drilled up dip in the oxide. Okay. Then you can see our little 50 by 100 block there, the first one under sulfide. That's where we found the sulfide resource that's open both down dip and a long strike. So for us to get to that silver crest, 95 million ounces, which their feasibility is on, which was on the graph there, that's that first orange box there. We only have to find 200 meters by 300 meters to have almost 100 million ounces of silver. Okay, so that's a pretty easy footprint to chase. And to get into
high-grade silver, that's low-cost production.
It has a lot of pluses. And of course, the next block there is to get into that top 10 producers, the average of those top 10 producers, okay, to have kind of 165 to 200 million ounce resource. So we're really leveraged to this. I mean, the impact of this next round of drilling, chasing it, is really profound for the company. We can really get over the hurdle of significance quickly. We don't have to find very many tons at this grade and this thickness to really, really impact the market. The other thing I don't have a slide in this is just the district as a whole. Water Pump Creek is about 5.5 kilometers northeast of the Illinois Creek oxide, which was an outcropping CRD as well. Okay. That portion of the system was all zoned toward copper and gold mineralization. It's all lead, zinc, silver to the northeast toward Water Pump Creek. It's a classic porphyry-driven district with zoned CRD mineralization moving from proximal to more distal environments. That whole stretch between Water Pump Creek and Illinois Creek only has a handful of drill holes in it. And like all CRDs, they're traps based on stratigraphy and structure, and the carbonate units you have are physical traps. We're working on a reinterpretation of the district right now that shows overlapping thrust plates with a series of additional targets as we move back to the south. So the second element of
And
this
Joe,
year,
just to put it into a little less geological speak for the audience,
sure.
these porphyry systems are the plumbing, the heat source of where, as you get out from them, you get these CRDs and sometimes epithermal vein systems, but that's the guts of what causes the heat and pumps the fluids up higher into the system.
That's exactly right. So as an exploration geologist, I really use, that model and the fact that different metals are deposited different ways away from those things. So there's vectors in both the chemistry of the rocks, in the chemistry of the fluids, in the metals you see being deposited when, to focus back to the center of the system. So ultimately, what this tells us that we have huge potential to link the whole system together and understand it more fully and drive ourselves back to oftentimes the centers of these systems are really copper gold rich. and characterized by that, where the distal parts of the systems are lead, zinc, silver. Our real goal now is to put together that whole story and see how that potential rolls back to make this even a bigger system.
Well, another thing it points to, Joe, is the power of the mineralizing system. So you wouldn't be looking for something small as you get deeper in, closer to the heat source.
No, that's exactly right. That's what brought me to this property originally. I just appreciated the scale, the fluid scale of the system. We're looking at fluids moving through a 10 by 10 kilometer area, starting from an intrusive source there.
Wow.
And in really seeing this exceptional grade at a point just tells you how much metal was in the system originally. So the upside of that is we're just starting this system. It has real scale. The bigger CRD systems in the world have kind of 4 or 5 kilometer continuous mineralization of replacement. That's easy to envision here. Although ultimately we're at the point now we just need to start drilling, because historically everybody focused on the Gaussian at the top and never really chased the rest of the system. Anaconda understood it perfectly, but then it went into USMX, Dakota Mining,
They had a
small
little,
kind of
they
heap
had a
leach
little,
gold companies.
they had a little problem down in Chile.
Well, they did too. That's ultimately why they left. So, luckily, Kit from his history and from my history had the opportunity to pick up the district. As simple as that.
Why don't we go
Awesome.
to the next slide and we can,
Yep.
we'll talk about that briefly. So as we've said, the oxide gold is still important. It's no longer a primary, the primary focus this coming year or this year in 2022. But Alan, I do want to point out, when we made the decision to go public a year ago and went through all the steps to get listed on the TSX, we had already just completed an updated 43101 resource study on the oxide at Illinois Creek. And that's shown here, the 525,000 ounces of gold equivalent at a very good grade for an open pit at 1.3 grams per ton gold equivalent. So importantly, this was the qualifying resource to go public. All the early valuations scenarios that were put together by our financial advisor, Scott Speed, and his group at Agentis Capital in Vancouver, helping us go public, we're using this. So a takeaway here is the valuation going public was based on this resource. No value really was assigned to Honker, was assigned to Round Top, or more importantly, assigned to Water Pump Creek. It's all going forward. So, and also this was an operating open pit mine. So you can permit and operate a mine at this location. And a couple of years ago, the state of Alaska, our regulator, turned over and gave to us the entire mine permit data set. About $6 million in 1996 research, all the geotechnical studies, hydrogeology, everything from fish studies to wetland studies. So we're working on that now. We're moving ahead to re-permit this, to reopen it. That will take a little bit of a back seat. We'll continue the work, but just wanted to point out what was the main asset is now a secondary asset. So go ahead to the next slide, please, Vanessa. And I'll let Joe talk briefly about Honker and Round Top, and then we'll wind it up for you.
Would you gentlemen mind if we start winding it up now, because we're getting a little close on time here. I see we got about 4 more minutes left, so I wanted to kind of wrap it up and talk about where to from here.
Yeah, let's skip the exploration couple of targets here too, and because we've heard the main thing, Water Pump Creek, and just why don't you just go on to the where we're at, share wise, those sorts of things, Kit.
Yeah, that'd be great to sort of what's coming up.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that while we have the capitalization structure up here. So coming up, for 2022, we have planned 6 1,000-meter drill program focused on Water Pump Creek. And a little bit of that will be assigned to a prospect called Last Hurrah, which is just a continuation of the Water Pump Creek structure. It actually goes south and is directly beneath the airstrip. So easy access. All this will be a pickup truck accessible, which will lower our drilling costs. So just want to point out that in November of last year, we went public, raised 5.3 million Canadian at a price of about 85 cents. We have no warrants with that, so no warrants outstanding. 2 institutional shareholders we're very happy about, Prescott Capital out of Denver, advised by Quentin Henney, and then also Delbrook Capital. Both of those entities participated about $1 million each in the going public raise and had also been shareholders prior to that. So very closely held. We try to keep a very tight and simple share structure, all common shares, nothing tricky anywhere. So any questions there, Alan, you'd like to ask?
Where the seasonality and when would you expect to be getting back up there and finding some more of that sweet looking drill core?
We will be reopening the camp in late March, early April. This is not a heavy snowfall area, well, maybe a couple feet. So we'll just reopen the airstrip at that time, get everything going and start drilling in mid-May. And then we can easily have a 4-month drill season. It's really just capital and budget dependent. We can go into October without a whole lot of work. And then after that, we would have to bring in some Canadian winter drilling techniques, but obviously that's done all the time in Canada.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Vanessa, I'll ask you to turn off the screen share because I'm going to wrap things up now. But good on you guys. You did a lot of great work as a private company, and your recent drill program, and I'm pretty excited about where that's going to lead you. You guys are getting a good understanding of the geology and the mineralizing system, and it's a pretty high grade and looks like it has some legs on the size.
We really agree with you, Alan. It's something that we've just finally realized in the last year or so, but there's been 40 years of work prior to this, and it's just taken a long time to assemble all the data, all pre-digital. Joe and his team have done a great job. Everything is in a 3D leapfrog model, and we'll have a very extensive geologic team on site again this year, soil sampling, working out the structure, and more importantly, drilling some high grade for you.
Well, I sure like the look of that core. I'm going to wrap things up, guys, and we'll have a chat on the other end. So there you go, folks. Western Alaska Minerals, I've been following for a little while now. Vanessa reached out to me, and I know some of her associates, and was really impressed with the story. And then they put some drill results out, and I really like the whole package that they have. They've put together a company that has a nice tight share structure. They have good people involved, some of the world experts on these kind of deposits that they're looking at. They have drilled some very beautiful looking drill core, as we talked about during the interview. And I think that this year they're going to be able to unlock a lot of shareholder value. So I wanted to get them on ahead of their next round of drilling. Based on what they've got so far, I think there won't be any problem in delivering more good stuff for us to talk about on future shows. And as always, my shows are for information purposes only. It's important for you to speak with your financial advisors and do your homework. And I stress that do your homework part. And I think if you check out their website, you'll see good presentations of what they have, good news releases of what they found, and a strong team and a very reasonable valuation of only about $12 million at this current moment. So I think that there's lots of blue sky for these guys. So on that note, have a great day and we will talk to you soon.